When I saw Masquerada at PAX 2015, my curiosity was immediately piqued. I am a former tabletop RPG player and also game master, and I could smell one on my own pretty much immediately. Masquerada Songs and Shadows is an RPG that includes a French comic book style art with a Baldur's Gate combat system, and it's based on Renaissance Italy, which seemed like a really interesting combination to me. Now, it's been 13 months since I saw that game at PAX, and it has been finally released. And I must really confess that wasn't really what I was expecting, but it might still be one of my favorite games of the year. The main issue that Masquerada is going to have trying to make a dent in the massive marketplace of indies in Steam is that it markets itself as a computer RPG, but I ask you to think. When you think about a computer RPG, you're probably thinking about things like Baldur's Gate, Fallout, Skyrim, games with a lot of choices and customizations, where you can choose to an extent what your character says, what he does, who he is, and even maybe make choices that affect the overall plot and the plot of those around you. That is not the game that Masquerada is. It is a much more linear game. You don't have any choice on what your characters say, who they are, what they look like. It is a very set story that they want to tell. And after playing this for a few hours, it dawned on me what this game really is. It's a JRPG. It's a JRPG with a Baldur's Gate style combat, but it also helps that the setting and the story of the game are magnificent. And I really think that there is a market for this type of game. So Masquerada puts you in the shoes of Cicero Gabar. He used to be a detective that was exiled for 5 years until he receives a letter from the patriarch of the city offering him an obscene amount of money to look into something. Now, you don't set a game in something based on Renaissance Italy if you're not going to look for some intrigue, right? This is after all the setting that gave us people like Niccolo Machiavelli, the Borgia family, the Medicis, all very well known and historically respected schemers. So you're going to get a lot of politics, you're going to get a lot of intrigue, and most of the game you will be watching these characters trying to navigate the politics and the issues of the city to try to get their investigation done. The plot is very compelling. It really deals with what's going on with the world at the time, and I really like how they have incorporated the companion quest. So in most games, when you get companion quests, they're usually compartmentalized into their own thing, right? They have their own plot. You usually have to take a break from whatever is going on. Masquerada weaves them into the narrative of what is going on with the main plot. So these things come up while the plot is going on. They are usually related to it, and most of them tend to come back into the plot later on as a way of reincorporation. So it feels very natural and very well put together. This is backed up by an excellent and well thought out setting. The city of Ombre has a long and rich history. It has complicated factions with deep social hierarchies that have also histories of their own, and even factions within factions. Now, when you start the game, there is a civil war between these two classes. There is a Masquerada, they are the ruling class, and what determines what class you're in is whether you have these things called a Masquerine. Masquerines are these masks that grant the world magical powers. People who don't have those are called contadini, and they are essentially just peasants. They live in abject poverty, they have very few opportunities for advancements, but they also make the majority of the people. So the conflict at the center of Masquerada, the Masquerines, are also what sets up the main mechanics of the game. The game doesn't really have equipment, so you won't be spending 10 minutes looking through your fallen enemies inventory to see what cool sword you can get or what armor you're going to steal from them. Rather, the power is derived from the Masquerine. So the Masquerine are divided into the 4 elements: water, air, fire, and earth. And while Cicero can choose what element he will be at the beginning of the game, his companion can't. So you will get one companion for every element, and whatever you see to choose your Cicero to be. They are also divided into 3 different stances. They aren't really classes, they are more like roles. So there's the Sicario, which is a rogue, the Paviseri, which is a tank, and a Dirge, which is a fighter that's mostly based around crowd control. Cicero being a maestro hero can change to whatever he wants into the 3 stances, but what this means is that while there is no actual equipment, there is some differentiation between the characters. There are also no levels in the game. What really happens is you receive a skill point at different times of the plot. With the skill points, you can upgrade existing skills or purchase new skills, but keep in mind that you only have 4 skills that you can equip for combat, and power-up skills are a lot more powerful than just skills that have 1 or 2 ranks in them. So what this game is really asking you to do is asking you to pick what 4 skills you want to focus on and essentially customize your character using those 4 skills rather than through equipment or through levels. The game is very linear, but there are some reasons to explore. So you can find raw masquerades littered through the world, as well as inks and patterns that will grant you additional bonuses, and also you will find codexes scattered through the world, and this is a very detailed campaign world, so there's going to be a lot of codexes. In fact, even though the game is fairly linear, I did miss a couple of things during the game, so there is definitely some exploring you will be doing. It is just not the focus of this game. Now, the combat itself is familiar to anybody that has played Baldur's Gate or any Black Isle RPG in the 90s, or even Pillars of Eternity last year. You will have direct control of your 3 characters, you will pause the action with space, and Masquerada goes very, very fast. So you are going to be asked to stop it every few turns, or even every few frames, I would say. The easiest way to get killed in this game is to ignore that and to just let the game go thinking that you have this, only to find out very late that you don't and you die. Since the game is very linear and it does have points based on how far you are in the story, it means that the developers have a very tight control over challenge. A lot of the bosses can be extremely challenging if you don't approach them correctly, and there's not really a lot you can do if that's the case. You can go and start leveling up, you can do something else and come back when you're stronger. Success in this game really depends on learning your skills, learning how to manage your cooldowns, and learning positioning so that you can get the biggest charge for your masquerades as fast as you can. The raw masquerades you pick up don't have different skills, what they have is a special power, and the faster that you do certain actions depending on the class, the faster those masquerades are going to charge. So for example, the Sicario, the assassin class, will have charge every time that you move around and you stab somebody in the back. So it is asking you to think very carefully about your positioning, as well as the skills that you're using and the cooldowns that you're using. Bosses are very creative in this game. There are a few straight fights that are just a big monster with a lot of health and a very powerful attack, but there are also bosses where you must protect innocent bystanders. There are monsters that have you trying to manage different things at the same time. So it does try to keep things fresh, and I think it is a very creative use of the combat system as well. The presentation is clear as well. As I mentioned before, it has this art style reminiscing of French comics, and it is very well animated as well as very well voice acted. So this focus on great art direction and voice acting and in creative art and design rather than on graphical fidelity means that Masquerada is probably going to be one of those games that 5 years from now is still going to look just as good than it does today. That being said, the game isn't perfect. They did have some issues, so there were some voice lines that wouldn't play, or that they would play out of sync with the dialogue, which is a problem in a game that depends on story. In other occasions, I've had animations that don't trigger. For example, a character that's supposed to be walking, it's being just dragged motionless through the street as if it was being an action figure dragged by a toddler. There were also some crashes. It was only a handful of times in the nearly 20 hours of games that I had, but it is still a problem because the checkpoint system in this game isn't the friendliest, so you can lose a fair bit of progress if the game crashes. One particular crash came right after I beat the last boss. So there are very few things that are as jarring and as infuriating as having the game crash just as you're experiencing the high of beating the last boss in a tough battle. Don't let any of this dissuade you from buying this game. It has a great story, a novel setting, and challenging combat system. And for $25 it took me about 20 hours to beat, so it is a fairly good value for your buck. Just don't go expecting that this game is going to be a computer RPG in the sense of having a lot of customization and a lot of player just because it's just not what this is. But I do recommend that if you really are interested in a really good JRPG with a really interesting and fun combat system, a novel setting, and just excellent story, I would go ahead and pick it up, and I am giving this one a 4 out of 5. If you like this review, please visit us at enemyslime.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at @TheEnemySlime. You can follow us on Facebook at @TheEnemySlime as well. Subscribe and all that stuff.